Hi, my name is Glenn Mulcahy. Today I'm going to be talking about coaching beyond the game. I've been involved in youth sports for the better part of my life. I've coached for the last 2 decades, and for the last 7 years I've had the opportunity to interact with a couple of thousand coaches of minor hockey while I've run and facilitated clinics in order for them to complete their certification. In almost every clinic I get asked by coaches, how can they better connect with their players? How do they relate to players? And what I've learned over the course of my research over many years, when I started getting asked that question, there are so many other areas of coaching that we're unable to touch on in the certification clinics when they're getting started, because it's important to help them understand how to run a practice, how to run drills, how to manage their benches, deal with game sheets, and all the other nuances when they first get started as coaches. But as they evolve, hopefully, as I have over the last 10-15 years, they realize there's so much more to coaching. I'm going to try to give you a Reader's Digest version of how best to connect to your players, but this is a 15-minute version of a normal 60-minute presentation I would do to expand on the subject matter. Well, as I mentioned, the big question I get is how to connect with players. I also ask my coaches in clinics to define and describe or write down what they feel is the top characteristics of their great coach or a great teacher that they had in their youth. And I've done it in various different ways, whether I've done it on a whiteboard, or I've written down their responses, or I've written it down on an easel, or I've done some various other means of doing it now. But the number one answer that every coach comes up with is that their coach or their teacher cared about them. They were caring. The best quote that I've found and I believe in is, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Teddy Roosevelt. It's important to have the knowledge of the game. It's important to develop and understand the X's and O's. But you also have to develop the soft skills and the art of coaching in terms of caring for your players, relating to your players, and they'll go to the end of the earth for you. In recent months, the biggest transformation that a lot of people talk about is how Iceland has developed their football program from being 131st globally to achieving as high as 23rd globally in recent months. They qualified for the Euro 2016 football championship, and they're also successful in beating England in that same championship. How did they do it? There's about 4 things that they really focused on. The number one thing was they invested in their infrastructure. In 2000, they identified and realized that in order for them to improve their football program, they would have to invest in facilities that would permit their youth to develop more than a few months of the year. They realized they had a weather problem. Most of their fields were covered in snow for a better part of the year, and they weren't able to participate outdoors. So what they did, starting in 2000, they started building what they call soccer houses. They're indoor facilities with AstroTurf so that their kids could play and develop year-round. They now have 7 of those facilities. They've also invested in 150 outdoor fields with underground heating so that they were able to melt the snow sooner and keep those fields going longer. That's number one. Number 2, the biggest investment they made was in their coaches. They recognized, like the European hockey model, that the key development years is when the kids were between the ages of 8 and 14. And instead of having their high-level coaches at 17, 18, 19, or when they got it to adults, they invested in having their best coaches work with their youth. They now have over 600 elite coaches that work with their youth players, which is a 1 to 550 ratio, 550 inhabitants of Iceland, versus England, they have 1 elite coach for every 11,000. The other big success story about Iceland qualifying and winning against England in the Euro Cup was the fact that Iceland only has 325,000 people. And these state-of-the-art facilities are publicly funded. The third thing they did is one of their youth coaches that developed through coaching youth, then coached their men's team, then coached their women's team. Over the course of 15 years, was offered the opportunity to coach their elite national team with the aspirations of qualifying for the 2016 Euro Cup. He was then partnered with a co-coach, a mentor, so to speak, who was the head of Sweden's national program, the head of Nigeria's national program, and they worked together to develop their players and transform their team into greatness. One of the biggest things that Heimer did, the co-coach, was he did something that I was just blown away with. Think of a national or a professional coach in North America doing this. He knew that it was important to get the fans on board early and connecting with the fans. So one of the things he started doing in 2012-13 en route to the 2016 Euro Cup is he would go to a pub and it would be full, standing room only, and he would announce the starting roster for that night's game. He would do so before he even released it to the press, which really had them in a tizzy. Think of someone doing that in North America at the professional level, sharing strategy of how they're going to play and who's going to be on their starting roster. That'd be unheard of. As a result of what happened in Iceland with the infrastructure investment, the investment in their coaches, which helped develop their players, they were able to achieve greatness in Euro Cup, and they won against England, one of the major powerhouses in football worldwide. And this was their celebration. Actually, they lost to France, but because of the success and qualifying, this is what happened in Iceland when they returned home. Not only did Iceland transform their football program and achieve greatness at the Euro Cup, they transformed their nation, where they're big fans of their football program. And I suspect, based on the investment they've made in their infrastructure, investment in their coaches to develop their players, that Iceland is going to continue to compete at a much higher level than they had in past. One of the biggest challenges that coaches are going to have is developing a culture of trust on their teams. I learned from a mentor of mine many years ago, the best way to do so is first, you have to extend trust to your players. Every year, start the season with a clean slate. Every year, understand that it's going to be more important for you to extend trust to them than they in turn will trust you. 4 qualities of trust, A plus B plus C plus D. The first is your ability. They want to know that you have the ability to coach them, to teach them the game, the systems, the strategies. That's part of it. That's what you learn and you start developing as your coaches in certification clinics, when you go to coach conferences, skill summits. You work on your ability. Number 2, B. They want you to be believable. I learned long ago the expression, talk the talk and walk the walk. There's nothing more frustrating when somebody says one thing, but they do another. And I learned that lesson in sports as a coach very early. I was coaching a team, I think they were 7 years old, hockey 3, and I told the players at the beginning of the practice, we'll have 10 minutes of stick and puck, and then we're going to do a warm-up, and then we'll do some skill stations. At the end, we'll have a fun game, we'll play some, maybe we'll scrimmage or what have you. And the skill stations that we were doing were actually a little bit more complicated in the age group that I had been coaching. And I wanted them to come out of the comfort zone, but we had to regroup a couple of times to explain the drills. And by the time we'd finished the skill stations, the practice was over. So I had to pull all the players in and say, I'm sorry guys, next practice, I'll make up for the shortfall. We'll have like 10 or 15 minutes of fun time at the end. So I believe in rewarding them for their effort in a practice. And one of my players skates up to me and he goes, "Coach, you didn't honor your promise." And literally like that. I will never forget him skating up to me and saying, "You didn't honor your promise." And it was a reminder for me, painfully so, for the remainder of that season, because every practice he would come up to me before we went out to the ice. "Coach, you're going to honor your promise." And I would honor my promise and then some. Believability. C stands for connection, and that's the question I get asked over and over, how I connect with my players. It's really difficult for me to cover that in a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. I just spent, I was fortunate to go to one of the first transformational coaching conferences hosted by my friend and colleague, John O'Sullivan, Changing the Game Project in Boulder, Colorado. I was there for 3 days. And it was all about how to connect with your players and transforming the culture of your teams. But what I can leave you with is an exercise that I learned early on in my coaching career, and I've done it every year since. At the beginning of a season, I ask my players why they play this sport. And they'll tell you because it's fun. Literally, 97% of them. Then I'll ask them a second question. What is fun about it? And you'll get all kinds of different reasons. From, focusing on skills, the tournaments, the snacks, and so on and so on. And then the third question I ask is what's not fun about the sport? And that's when you'll get some of the red flags, particularly for you as a coach. If, you hear from them saying, "I don't like when coaches are screaming at me." Or, "I don't like when coaches are screaming at the officials." And I started hearing those really early on in my coaching career. So I really started scaling back how vocal I was on the bench, when I was, at times maybe being too vocal with officials. And I started thinking, you know what? It's all about the kids. Let them learn. And you can't control a game. So I just started becoming, very quiet on the bench and just let them play. That activity and that exercise has really helped me better understand the players. But it also helped the players understand their teammates in terms of their motivation. And it was one of many exercises that I've been doing in order to connect with my players, and I highly recommend you consider doing that as a coach. The last one is D, dependable. If you're going to be a head coach and you perhaps may have one or, say a couple of kids that are playing that sport, please don't be a head coach of 2 teams because you will have conflicts. It's really important as a coach, I believe, to be the first there and the last to leave. It's also important to be there for every game, for every practice, for all the other activities you have. There's nothing more frustrating when you're a player and you have a part-time coach. You want to be a full-time coach. If you made the commitment, you've signed on to coach the team, please coach the team. What do kids want from us? Started this presentation with they want people that care. Not important how much you know, is how much you care. Number 2, respect. Amanda Visick did a study. She identified 81 characteristics of what was fun. The number 2 characteristic is when a coach treats their players with respect. One of the big reasons why kids are quitting is when the coaches don't treat the kids with respect. So remember how important that is. I will also talk about the various, what do you respect? Who do you respect? You respect the game. You respect your teammates. You respect your coaches. You respect the officials, the other team, the parents, and so on and so on and so on. So that word becomes part of their DNA. They want encouragement. Things like thumbs up, or the fist bump, or the high five are really important. But not just when they do something positive, not when it's a result orientated. Think about praising effort. And if they try to do something and somehow, if it turns out that it's a turnover, or the other team may score because they tried to do something that you've been practicing, and encourage them. Say, hey, it's okay. We'll get them next time. We got lots of time in the game. Don't worry about it. And if something that you're trying to correct and they've made the same thing over and over, say an offside, or they're icing the puck continuously, wait until they come on the bench. And then give them the time to debrief, and then pull out the whiteboard and say, hey, what did you see out there? And this is what I'm seeing, and show them so they visually understand it. But be positive when you do it. And lastly, clear, concise communication. Believability, talking the talk, walking the walk. Make sure that you're clear, you're concise, and that you're fair. And you'll do okay. My favorite coach of all time, and I suspect most will say the same thing, is John Wooden. And there's so many quotes that I could be here for hours. But my favorite quote of John Wooden's is, it's what you are as a person is far more important than who you are as a basketball player. He realized early in his coaching career that it was more important for him to relate to his athletes, his players, as people, and connect with them as people, so that they in turn would develop as athletes. 11 national championships in Division I basketball. He was able to connect with his players, and what he did was connect with them to a point where recognizing that not all of them are going to go on to the NBA. Some did, but many of them would go on and do great things. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, and leave legacies of their own. I'm going to leave you with this last video, and I'll just do a quick recap at the end. Well, what does a modern coach sound like?
Everybody, heads up high. Heads up high. Let's talk for a moment, yeah. Look, I gotta see your eyes, guys. Okay? There's no disappointment, okay, in your effort, okay, in the whole tournament, in the whole season. It's been an incredible journey, okay? We fought, look at the score, 8-7, okay, 12-10 in hits, came to the last out, we didn't quit. That's us. Boys, that's us. The only reason why, okay, I'll probably end up shedding a tear is because this is the last time I'm gonna end up coaching you guys. But I'm gonna bring back with me, and the coaching staff are gonna bring back with me, and you guys are gonna bring back something, okay, that no other team can provide but you guys. That's pride, okay? Pride. You're gonna take that for the rest of your life, what you provided for a town in Cumberland. You had the whole place jumping, right? You had the whole state jumping. You had New England jumping. You had ESPN jumping, okay? Because wanna know why? They like fighters. They like sportsmen. They like guys who don't quit. They like guys who play the game the right way. Okay, we got down to the nitty-gritty. We're one of the best teams in the world. Think about that for a second. For the world, right? So we need to go see our parents because they're so proud of you. Okay? But one more. I want a big hug. I want everyone to come in here for one big hug. Okay? One big hug. One big hug. Then we're gonna go celebrate. Hey boys, then we're gonna go celebrate with our parents, and then tomorrow we're gonna celebrate, and then we're gonna come back home to a big parade. Okay? Got it? Okay? I love you guys. I'm gonna love you forever. You've given me the most precious moment, okay, of my athletic and coaching career. And I've been coaching a long time, okay? A long time. I'm getting to be an old man. I need memories like this. I need kids like this, okay? You're all my boys, okay? You'll be the boys of summer, okay? So for the last time, we're gonna try to suck it up and we're gonna yell Americans, okay? 1, 2, 3, Americans! Okay, boys, good job.
I wish I had seen that video about 7 years ago when I had a similar situation with a team where we went into the gold medal of a tournament in the interior of BC, and we lost the last game by 1 goal. And I think it was like a 7-6 game. It was an excellent game. And when we went into the dressing room, I told the players how proud I was of them. I knew how proud their parents would be of them, what they had accomplished over the course of the weekend. This was the 6th game in 3 days. I really thought that was a turning point in our season, because at the last game of the year, we had a similar situation where, as the end of the second period, we had intermission, we were down by a goal, and I looked at all the players and I said, what do we need to do? And the players said, we need to leave everything on the ice and go for it. And they did. We tied the game early in the third, and it was really close. It was a tie right up until about a minute and a half in the game, and we scored, and we actually ended up winning the game. We won a banner. So if it hadn't been for that adversity they handled in that tournament earlier in the year, they might not have won that game at the end of the season. I'm going to leave you with 4 takeaways that will help you connect with your players, will help you relate to your players more, which is the biggest question I get in all these clinics. Number 1, keep it safe and fun. When I say keep it safe, it's not only just keeping it safe to prevent injuries of your players, but it's also giving them an opportunity to be safe to fail. Encourage them to make mistakes in practices. Encourage them to make mistakes in games. It's okay if they make a mistake. The team will have their back if you develop a culture of allowing them to make mistakes. And that's where they're going to become creative, and that's where they're going to develop their skills. When I say keeping it fun, the number one reason why kids are playing is because it is. The number one reason why they're quitting is because it isn't. Number 2, teach skills. And it's not just teaching skills of the game, it's teaching skills of life. If it hadn't been for all the life lessons that I learned from coaches, from all the sports I played in my youth, many of which took me under their wing as father figures, because I lost my dad when I was really young. And I cherish all those life lessons that I learned, even to today. Things like respect and sportsmanship, winning with humility and losing with dignity, how to overcome adversity, punctuality, commitment, and so on and so on and so on. Without those life lessons through all the sports I played, I wouldn't be who I am today. And last, in terms of the third, care passionately about your players. I told you that the survey that I've done for years, the number one characteristic why coaches, or number one characteristic that coaches felt of the great coach they had in their youth, was that they cared, and right in behind that is passion. And last but not least, recognize that today in this clinic, this workshop, this presentation is just another step in your journey as a coach. It's a lifelong process, lifelong learning. The more you learn, and by attending conferences and going to clinics and looking at all the other aspects of coaching other than just the X's and O's, the better you will become as a coach. I learned when I was in a conference in the summer. If you have a job where you're paying the bills, you're just making a living. But if you are a coach, you have a purpose and you're making a difference. And the difference that we do as coaches is we develop youth into adults so they in turn can leave a legacy. Make a difference and leave a legacy. Thank you.